Let me tell you about the night my life changed forever. The night when I thought I was going to die. The night I lost my sanity. It was a warm spring night and I was 13 years old. My parents had gone on holiday for the weekend, leaving me home alone. I invited my two best friends, David and Arnold, over to keep me company. We were in my bedroom, listening to music. Arnold reached out and lowered the volume. "Hey, why don't we tell some scary stories?" he said. "I'm in the mood for a scare." "Sounds like a good idea," David agreed. "Who's going to go first?" I have one," I volunteered. "But, I don't know if I should tell it." "Come on," said David. "Let's hear it." "Okay," I said. "It's a pretty terrible story I heard once. It all happened many years ago. There was a man who had a 7-year-old son. His wife had died giving birth to the boy. They lived way out in the countryside and there were no neighbors for miles. They didn't even have a phone, because at the time, the lines didn't stretch out that far. One day, the father came home from work and he was horrified to find that his house was on fire. He immediately thought about his young son and he rushed inside, calling the boy's name. When he heard his son answer, he realized the poor boy was trapped in his bedroom. The father ran to the door and tried to open it, but it wouldn't budge. A beam had fallen from the bedroom ceiling and blocked the door. He banged and banged on the door with all his might, but it was too solid. He even rushed against it with his shoulder, trying to break it down, but it was no use. All the time he could hear his son screaming. The boy was in a panic, screaming and crying out for help. The man kept trying to batter down the door, but no matter what he did, it held firm. He shouted in rage. He wailed in despair. He no longer thought about anything else, just the door and his son screaming on the other side. His son burned to death in the house. The father died too. He never managed to open the door, and he stayed there to the end, desperately trying to break it down until he succumbed to the smoke and the flames. Arnold looked at me in disgust and said, "That's not scary." "I have to admit, it's pretty weak," David agreed. "It's more sad than scary." That's when I decided to tell them the last part of the story. I hadn't planned on telling them that part, but I got carried away trying to impress them. It was so stupid to continue. I should never have told them. "Wait, you don't know the rest of the story," I said. "Ever since then, the father's ghost is still trying to open the door and save his son. And if you say, well, I'd rather not say the exact words. But basically, if you call him and tell him that everything is burning and ask him to come and help you, his ghost will appear at your door and take you away." David looked at me thoughtfully. "Have you ever tried it?" he asked. "No," I replied. "I'd be too scared to test it out." Arnold had a gleam of excitement in his eyes. "Hey, we should do it right now," he said. I tensed up. I had no desire to summon a ghost, and I was already sorry I had said anything about the legend. David smiled. "Yeah, why not?" he said. "I was going to tell them that I didn't want to do it, but they didn't give me a chance." Arnold put on a trembling voice to imitate the little boy and screamed, "Daddy! Daddy, help me! The flames are all around me! I'm scared!" Then he burst out laughing. I didn't crack a smile, but him. He laughed. David watched him with amusement, saying nothing. Arnold started screaming again, even louder this time. "I'm burning, Daddy! I'm burning! Help! Stop it, Arnold! It's not funny!" I shouted. I didn't mean to, it just came out of me. I was really scared and I didn't want to hear him anymore. "What are you afraid of?" Arnold laughed. "Oh, come on, it's just a stupid story. That's all. Not even a good one." With a smirk, he continued, "Daddy! Please help me. The fire is burning me alive. All of a sudden, there was a loud knock on my bedroom door. Arnold stopped in mid-scream. We all froze. There was an eerie silence. We all looked at each other. None of us made a sound. Boom! 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 We almost jumped out of our skin. Boom! 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 "What's that noise?" Arnold exclaimed. "If this is a joke, it's really not funny," said David. His face was white as a sheet. The banging on the door continued. Then we heard a man screaming. Those horrible cries will remain forever etched in my memory. I can still hear them now. It sounded like the cry of a dying animal. It was inhuman and infinitely sad. The banging against the door and that horrible scream continued relentlessly. I was terrified and tried to hide behind the wardrobe. Arnold grabbed a chair and stood poised to strike anyone who entered the room. David curled up against the wall. Tears were streaming down his face. "No! No!" he cried. "What is this? I'm scared." Immediately, the screaming outside the door grew stronger, even more harrowing, even more terrifying. The banging on the door grew louder. I thought it was going to fly off its hinges. Then panic seemed to overcome David. "I can't take it anymore," he wailed. "I've got to get out of here." With that, he ran to the window and opened it. "No!" I cried. "Don't!" But before I had time to finish my sentence, he jumped out of the window. I heard him fall. For a brief moment, everything was silent. Then I heard him cry out in pain. "Ah! I fell! I'm hurt! My back! Exclamation mark! I'm hurt!" I ran to the window and looked out. David lay on the concrete downstairs, screaming in pain. The screaming coming from behind the door got even louder and more crazed. The banging increased. I was going crazy. It was all a relentless nightmare, and David's screaming only added to the horror of the situation, especially since Arnold and I were too scared to leave the room to help him. Then I smelled something. I hadn't noticed it at first, but now the air in the room was filled with an awful stench. It was suffocating. The smell of burning flesh. It was unbearable. I turned away from the window and saw Arnold standing motionless in the middle of the room. His eyes were wide, and he was staring at the door, as if in a trance. Then he bent over and vomited on the carpet. The banging, the screaming, the shouting, the stench of burning flesh, and the sight of Arnold spewing was all too much for me. I began to throw up as well. I leaned back against the wall as David continued to howl outside and the furious knocking on the door continued. Then, I had an idea. Maybe David's cries outside were attracting the man outside the door. I closed the window. We sat on the floor with our hands over our ears, shaking in terror as the cataclysmic blows against the door continued unabated, and the awful cries pierced our eardrums, and the burning stench mixed with the smell of our vomit. Gradually the screams died down, the smell subsided, and the banging on the door grew weaker and weaker, until finally everything was silent. All we could hear were David's muffled cries of pain through the closed window. Arnold looked at me and asked me in a low voice, "What do we do now?" "Maybe we should call the police," I said. "Or the fire department. Or, I don't know, an ambulance to help David." "Where's your phone?" he asked. "Downstairs." "Do you think it's gone?" "Well, it's quiet," I replied hesitantly. "That's right," he said. "We'll have to go down. Well, I'll go. Anyway, it's gone, right?" "I guess so," I said. Arnold got up slowly and hesitantly walked to the door. He gently seized the handle and pushed the door open and peeked into the hallway. It was empty. Then, with a smirk on his face, he turned to me and said, "It's crazy. The door was open all the time. This stupid ghost." But he didn't have time to finish his sentence. In a flash, a hand came around the door and grabbed Arnold around the neck. He stood there petrified, without screaming, eyes wide in terror. The arm was blackened and charred. I could smell the burning flesh. Before I had time to react, Arnold suddenly disappeared right before my eyes, dragged through the doorway, and whisked down the hall at an impossible speed. The door slammed shut with a deafening clatter. I got to my feet and ran to the door, but I didn't dare to open it. I called Arnold's name again and again, but there was no response. I still couldn't bring myself to open the door. I was afraid that the charred man was still there. Nobody ever saw Arnold again after that night. My parents took me to a psychiatrist. I never told her anything, or anyone else. Not even my parents. They would never have believed me anyway. David did the same. He spent a month in the hospital. He broke his back in the fall. Even today, I still have a fear of opening doors. I'm terrified of what I might find on the other side. Tonight, he had purpose. The number was to be 20 of the best, or at least the best he could find. The 20 were to be found in the water, in their place of rest. They will be part of the offering, an offering that must be made. Out to sea, he realizes he must go, and in the horizon, an aged wooden boat, similar to a small rotting schooner, appears to him as a specter of the sea. His dark captain greets him at the pier and waves him aboard as a servant would greet an expected guest. It is known that the dark captain, shaped as a shadow of a large pirate, will guide him through to the soon-to-be-chosen, with his oar in hand, steering through the salty, dense, and suffocating fog. There were others fishing. He could sense it, though he could not see them, these competing fishermen. Their presence weighed down the air as though a final plea, a plea for life, was soon to be heard. The pressure mounted as the urgency was palpable, and soon his lottery would be chosen. And there they were, floating like underwater rows of corn. Souls, the ghost of weathered men and women made of oily liquid and illuminated smoke, familiar yet not. Vast fields of past experiences sprinkled the sea, mirroring the starry night above in darkness, silence, and spectacle. The harvest was to be made both quickly and with utmost certainty. He, the water farmer, the fisherman, must choose his bait wisely and throw back the unworthy catch, for there would be only one offering. The selections were to be made through the senses, not just of those senses of the physical world, but of the metaphysical as well. He must feel their energy, their being and emotion, their wisdom and sin, what made them who they were, and what will make him part of them, part of one. But how would he know? Understanding the task at hand but not the how, he fished, reaching his hand as far as he could toward the water, touching soul after soul, each time rejecting yet taking a part of them with him, as though he were collecting letters to home from lonely soldiers. Catch after catch is made and thrown back, until he finds one and another. Each choice made filled a hole in his spirit, like a mathematically perfected piece of a whole. He now knows that these chosen few represent his past, his present, and most importantly, his future. As each undeniable link is made with these lonely souls, each one manifests itself onto the dark captain schooner, slowly floating upside the boat, over the edges and into their place in the pews, much like Mercury finds itself. Only these souls start taking shape into ghostly men and women with cloudy and hollow eyes, skin of liquefied pearl, and strikingly faceless. They begin to slug into a pool at the bow of the ship. As the souls gather, they begin an entangled embrace, one after another, taking a liquescent shape. At the base of the creation, broad backs and strong chests stack in rows and depth to solidify the structure above 6 stacks of feet, hands, and knees. A backrest of sturdy shoulders begins to form. Armrests made of thighs melt together with the smooth curve at grips. The heads and bones gather at the top of the 9-foot design, creating a complex helixed catacomb, revealing the shape of an incomplete but great throne of pearly iridescence. This beautiful architecture will be his offering. The boat is almost filled with the remaining faceless 20, each one sitting at the inside edge of the pews when the dark captain points to a massive foggy wall slowly approaching. Time is running out to finish the harvest. The doctor will soon have his gift, and his future may be granted. The patient. He is lost in a nauseous stare. His fever has peaked now, and his energy is seeping through his pores as if it is an August afternoon in the swamps. As they prophesied, the pounds melted away, 37 of them in fact. Food would no longer be a pleasure but a chore. The shivers, fevers, and cramps were undersold, however. And he still has his flowing silver hair, a miracle by its own standards. Their poison was effective in its side effects, but the results are an invasive surgery away. The visitation to his bladder tends to take an unkind path, as though the cancer and its treatment were not penance enough. Now he finds himself struggling to make the simplest of movements as he rushes toward the emergency room for time, feels as though it is slipping away.
The hospital is unusually quiet today. He notices there are no ambulances under the canopies, and the parking lot seems empty. The entranceway is exceptionally bright, as well as it leads down a narrow hallway walled with frosted glass. There is a nurse at the end of the path waiting patiently for her patient in front of the triage desk. Strangely, there are only 3 people sitting idly in the large and bright waiting room, each with an expression of angst, uncertainty, and desperation. The nurse, dressed in white scrubs and red lipstick, simply points toward the waiting room with a smile and a nod. He knows the doctor must be coming out soon. Walking with an ethereal gait, the extraordinarily tall and slender doctor approaches the room wearing a long white and buttoned doctor's coat and pressed white pants. He greets his patients with a smile and clenched hands. "We all know why we are here, don't we?" the doctor asks. "Whichever one of you 4 brings me the best offering will be healed. Those who fail, do so, for as you know, I only have the time and inclination for one. Tomorrow your presentations will be made here. Go now to the water's edge. The captains await." He, the patient, did not understand. Had he not given enough to the doctor? His tortured body, broken spirit, and dignity were only the obvious tokens he had bequeathed to this doctor. Yet the price has not been paid? The other patients did not seem to bother with such tawdry questions. None of it mattered. All that mattered was the prize at hand, and that the competition had begun. The offering. The elderly schooner breaks through the dense fog and a shore emerges. It is dusk now. To his left and right he can see the other 3 patients on their boats, each distinctly different from the next. He shares glances of guilt, pity, sadness, and hopefulness with each of them, the emotions showing on his face as one would if they locked eyes with someone who had just lost someone. 3 will fail. 3 must fail. Having drifted ashore over large rocks and steps, the bow of the boat flattened out, making a ramp leading to newly paved asphalt roads. Each boat had its own empty road leading in the same direction. In the distance up the large and wavy hill was no longer the hospital but the doctor's office, surrounded by a magnificent cityscape sculpted by mismatched sized skyscrapers and crafted as though it could fit in a gigantic snow globe. This is where the offering would be delivered. In unison, the remaining souls gathered behind the throne and lifted it up onto their shoulders and began to march in a 2-row procession off the schooner. He quickly noticed that there was a soul missing from the middle of the procession that he now was forced to fill. Had he made a horrible miscalculation? Would the doctor notice the error? His color, while sickly, was more vibrant than the faint oyster shell iridescence of the ghosts. Surely the doctor would notice, but what other choice did he have? The other patients were marching as well, each carrying something in the front of their procession, yet invisible to him. The scene was that of a New Orleans jazz funeral, intensely sad and heavy, though awkwardly festive and beautiful. Yet he was the only patient to not be standing alone at the end of their marching party. He was confident his offering would still be enough, regardless of ritual. They soon reach the top of the hill, and each march meets at the foot of the steps of the doctor's office with their invisible offerings. The office resembles the exterior grandeur of a city museum. While there were no parade-goers on the street, the vast buildings were littered with strange figures cramming out of open windows for as tall as the eye could see. Their faces expressionless, yet body language showed a childlike wonder, grappling for a better look at an execution. The doctor stands at the top of the elevation with a welcoming smile while taking in the spectacle of the event, pleased. The doctor motions each patient forward with their offering and gestures them into his office. A shared expression of panic and qualm waxes over the other patients as they climb up the steps, each behind their procession and the last to enter the large arched double doorway entrance. After a few moments, each patient returns outside to the landing, and each with an evacuated gaze. The doctor finally locks eyes with him and calls for him to present his offering, sending unease and hope shivering down his spine. The procession of souls begins to march up the stairs with the incomplete throne at the lead. The throne was not brought inside like the other gifts were. It was placed in the middle of the landing at the top of the steps directly in front of the doctor and out in the open for his guests to admire. One by one the remaining souls morphed into the throne, each adding a different element and final touches to the masterpiece of his subconscious imagination. Towering over the doctor, the throne shined with what appeared as glowing and pulsating white marble. It fluttered iridescence with every heartbeat, for it was living architecture. At the top of the backrest, the helix hummed with the wisdom of the collective souls, as though they would forever be guidance for its owner. It was complete, immaculate, and divinely sublime. This throne was him, his shared soul with those chosen, his life experiences and combined energy from the life forces webbed throughout his life. It was his purpose, revealed and stunning. The doctor leaned over and whispered to him, "It's beautiful." Taking a lap around the glimmering throne, the doctor sensually caresses it as thought it were water at his fingertips. He steps forward, arms thrown to the sky to his guests, and yells with rebellious and incredulous tone, "Is this not beautiful?" All of the guests shrilled in excitement and quickly floated out of the windows, twisting up into the overcast sky, into the raised fog still lingering from the morning. The doctor, clearly pleased, turned back at the patient and gave a wide smile full of large white and perfectly capped teeth. Drunk from the intoxicating vision of the moment, unease somehow penetrated him at the sight of it all. Then, sobriety hit him as he thought to himself, why were 20 needed but only 19 used? Why am I in the procession and the other patients were not? Am I part of my throne, or is the throne made for me? What am I truly offering here? As the last question rolled off his tongue, he began to melt away, turning into a puddle much like his collection had done before creating his masterpiece. You prayed to be healed, did you not? Healed of pain, suffering, embarrassment, burden, and uselessness. I am granting you answered prayer. You have brought me the finest of offerings, and I warmly accept. His head now nearing the floor to top off the puddle of self he has created, angst and dread fill his soul. His thoughts spoke to the doctor one final time. Who am I to question your judgment, your will. And yet, at my end, I still have questions. The patient's puddle flowed purposefully and split toward all 6 legs of the throne with his final piece, his head solidifying the base of the left leg, his skull poking out just enough for the doctor to rest his heel in comfort. It was your average evening. The normally blue skies were turning a pale orange as the sun set. The evening breeze was rolling in, making everything a bit more relaxed and a little less hot. It was my last day of summer vacation in Florida, and I have to say I was very enthusiastic to be going home. Although my time there was great, and the locals treated me much better than my last trip to Florida, I was getting homesick, if you could call it that. I was going into my 2nd year of university in Waterloo, Ontario, and I was staying in a townhouse with some of my good friends from first year, Garrett and Sean. I was new to the whole our own place thing. I lived on campus most of first year, only moving into the new place about a month before summer. Garrett and Sean were great. Probably more of the reason I was homesick over the home itself. The place was pretty nice. It was recently built along with 4 others, all placed in a sort of square. The back doors of each house led out into a little courtyard in the back. Think of it as a shared backyard. The idea was pretty neat, but nobody up kept the back lawn. All of our front lawns looked amazing. Bright green grass, healthy trees, and the house beside us even had a small rose bush. The back, however, looked like something out of a horror movie. The trees were doing all right because they were hogging all the rain. The 2 birches in the back were massive. Their leaves created a great shade in the back, making it a great spot to read or relax. The grass, however, was yellow and white with entire patches just missing and replaced with dirt. The flower beds that scattered the back were filled with weeds and wildflowers. On top of that, there were anthills littered across the lawn, making ants in our houses a regular and annoying experience. The actual houses themselves were not too shabby. All 4 were identical, save for the color of our roofs. Mine had navy blue roof tiles, while our neighbors had gray, black, and brown, respectively. This made for comic feuds between the houses, such as Blue House versus Gray House. We would regularly play LAN games on Xbox, usually Halo, and the losing house had to do some yard work in the back. That was another reason I wanted to go back. Garrett, Sean, and I had been planning a LAN party amongst our own house for about a week via text. We would have had more, but all of the residents in the other houses were still on vacation or visiting family. My roommates themselves had only recently gotten back from their own vacations. I was a little worried they had ditched me, as neither had returned a text in 2 days, and the ones near the end were very short and told me very little about what we were doing. The original plan was to hit up a few local bars and then return to play some drunk Halo CE. My bet was that they had found a party to go to or something. My trip home was uneventful. Canadian customs is the easiest thing to get through. Not that they're not thorough or don't do their job properly. They are just way less strict and not nearly as in-your-face as American customs. The drive from the airport to home was great. I hadn't driven my Pontiac Sunfire in 2 weeks. The little red pile of scrap was the best. I had installed some great subs and upgraded the stock speaker to some actual good quality ones. The one thing I cared about was the music. The car could be a used Derby car, but as long as it has good speakers, I'm in. Suffice to say, when I got home after blasting music for 15 minutes, I was feeling pretty good. I walked up the steps and unlocked the door. I stepped in, took off my shoes. We had a strict no shoes in the house policy, and carried on in. The interior of the house was somewhere between what were they thinking and these guys are genius. The game room as we called it, it held out TVs, consoles, and couches, was directly connected to the kitchen through 2 openings in both the left and right sides of a wall that went down the middle. From the game room, you could see the table through the left and the fridge through the right. This made seeing if anyone was stealing some of your beer during a LAN night very easy. The cupboards, stove, and microwave were covered by the wall. Also connected to the game room was the main staircase. It led up one flight to the hallway. The hallway split off into all our rooms and one washroom. A laundry room was down a flight of stairs on the other side of the hallway. We kept the door to that room closed to keep the noise of the machines down. Finally, and most randomly, down a small corridor, just big enough to fit one person, from the game room was another washroom. This and the laundry room were the two things we just never understood about the house. The rest was perfect. When I entered the game room, I was surprised to find that Garrett wasn't there. He was usually always in front of the TV. I went to my room and threw my luggage on my bed. I was down for some fun. I could unpack tomorrow. I left my room and went over to Sean's room, which was directly beside mine. He and Garrett were both standing there, looking out Sean's window. Hadn't they seen me come in? Why didn't they come say hi? I walked up and gave them both a gentle push forward. Hey guys, long time no see? What the hell are you guys doing? Garrett turned and looked at me. His eyes were bloodshot and his hair was a mess. It looked like he hadn't slept in days. Are you guys stoned? I asked jokingly, knowing full well neither of them smoked anything ever. Garrett shook his head and said in a slightly agitated voice, "Tonight is off. Sean and I have decided to go spend some time with our parents. It has been a while." He was right. Both of them neglected to visit their parents even once this summer. I went and saw mine before my trip, but they said they would go see them reading week, which is what they did last year. Leaving during the summer to see their parents was odd for them, but hey, I missed my parents too, and I saw them just a couple weeks ago. Garrett turned to Sean. "Alan is here now. We can leave." Sean nodded, and they picked up their bags, which were placed on Sean's bed, and left. I watched them get into Garrett's car and drive away. Were they waiting for me at the window? I asked myself. Garrett had said that they could leave now that I was here, suggesting they had been waiting for a while. Is that why they look so tired? I put that out of my mind and decided tonight was going to be a game night, even if I was by myself. I went to the game room and put the Orange Box, a small collection of games made by Valve on one disc, into the Xbox. It started and I chose to play Half-Life 2, a beloved game from my younger years. I played through a few levels unhindered, until I reached a level that really freaked me out when I was younger. We Don't Go to Ravenholm, it was called. The game itself is not a horror game. It is just this one horror level thrown into the mix. It had zombies, a sense of forbidding, and dead bodies everywhere. I loved it, and I hated it. Turns out it was still pretty freaky for my more grown-up self. I had just finished the level when I heard a loud screeching sound in the kitchen. At first, I was practically crapping myself out of fear, but I manned up and went in. For a split second, I thought I could see the image of a face on the shiny surface of the microwave. It was distorted, but I could make out the dark, lifeless eyes and a half smile, half of broken teeth, rotting in its face. I blinked and it was gone, but the image was burned into my mind. It was getting pretty late, about 1 in the morning, and I was getting pretty tired. I also just finished a pretty scary level in Half-Life. I put the event to superstition and went into the fridge and got a Red Bull. I returned to my Xbox to find it off. Although this was unusual, it wasn't impossible. Xbox tend to surprise you. When I attempted to turn it on again, it didn't work. I went around back and found that it had actually been unplugged from the wall. Now, although Xbox can be surprising, this was just plain crazy. I could officially revoke my previous ban on my superstition. Nobody else is in the house. Nobody else is even in the other buildings. I am alone, and Xbox can't unplug themselves. I got up and ran as fast as I could to the door. I got in my car and drove to another buddy of mine's apartment. I gave him some story about how my internet was out, and I had to do an online research paper for a summer course I was taking. He allowed me to stay the night to finish my paper. What he didn't know was that I was simply looking for asylum from my own house. In the morning, I decided to give my roommates a text to see when they were coming back, and if anything strange happened to them, well, I was gone. I drove back to my house, now less scared because it was day. I went to my room and wondered how I came up with that excuse to stay at my buddy's last night. I realized it was so easy, because it was true. I had taken a summer course to lighten the load for my second year. The course was just writing papers and doing research. It got you out of a course, so I didn't mind. I had finished most of the material while at my parents' in the beginning of the summer. I only had 2 left. I decided tonight I would finish one, and I hoped nothing like what happened the other night would happen again. I worked diligently for hours. I had started around 2 p.m., stopping only for some food and washroom breaks, and worked right till 9 p.m. Over those hours, I had constant feeling of being watched. I know it sounds cliché, but I had never actually experienced it before. I just kept feeling uneasy and thinking someone was watching me. I never gave in to these thoughts to look around, however. I figured this whole mess was just in my head, and if I ignored it, I would be fine. After finishing the paper at 9, I browsed the internet for a few hours to cool my head off with random nonsense. Around 12 p.m., my room suddenly became incredibly cold. I got up and tossed a blanket over myself to keep warm, not wanting to use more energy by messing with the thermostat. The blanket didn't help, however, and it just kept getting colder, unnaturally cold for inside a house. Enough was enough, so I got up and made my way into the hallway where the thermostat was. As I opened the door, I looked to my left to where the device was, to see the laundry room door open. I had put laundry in when I got in this morning, but I could have sworn I closed the door. I moved to it. I reached for the doorknob and stopped my hand dead in motion. Just down that staircase, out of the darkness, was a dark, shadowy figure. It was roughly my size, although it was hard to see from the top of the stairs. Its arms were contorted and mangled. They looked smashed and broken. On its left hand, its normal fingers were replaced with long, claw-looking fingers. It was looking down, and I stood there, baffled, terrified, and shocked. My heart was racing, and beads of sweat rolled down my face. My mouth ran dry, and I found myself holding my breath. The thing made a motion to move its head, and I had had enough. I ran down the hallway with the full intention of leaving this house and not coming back, but I couldn't. I was blocked by something. I couldn't see anything in my way, but if I tried to move forward, my legs wouldn't budge. I looked back. The thing was still looking down, but had made it halfway up the stairs. It had placed its claw fingers on the wall and was dragging them with it, creating an eerie scratching noise, much like nails on a chalkboard. Unable to move forward, I retreated to my roommate's room to the right of my own, the one furthest away from that thing. I closed and locked the door behind me. I made a move for the window. I attempted to lift it, but it wouldn't budge. The screeching had stopped, so I figured I was safe in the room for now. I noticed something on Sean's desk, his laptop. Sean was a crazy blogger. He blogged all the time, no matter what. He used his laptop to blog on the go. The fact that is, was there means he really must have been anxious to leave. Was this thing what made them all crazy? I realized I could check his blog. He had to have blogged about it. I opened the laptop and entered his password. He had his blog as his home page, so I just had to open Google Chrome, and there it was. All of the blogs until the last week were his normal entries. How his day went, what he saw, what he plans on doing later, etc. Then, on they turned weird. The first 3 of the week he describes happenings very similar to those that happened to me. Random noises, things moving around, electronics being unplugged, and seeing distorted faces and reflective surfaces. The next 2, he starts referring to a thing, which is also what I had been calling it. I guess there is really no better name for it. In his own words, when I close my eyes, I can see it. It's always there. That face. Always there. I see it everywhere I look. I see it even when I don't look. I can't get it out of my head. It is toying with me. I know it. Draining me of my energy. Not letting me sleep. It wants to take me. Where? I don't know. I don't want to know. I want to get out. I can't. There's no entry for the next day, only a small box with the date and nothing in it. Underneath that was the last blog. It was made on the last day of the week, the day I go back. It said, Alan comes back today, and after yesterday, I can't. He needs to know. He can't be here. But he has to. It is the only way. Garrett came in today. The thing let him leave. He is here with me. We will wait together. Now I was here, trapped in this room as Sean was, and I felt helpless. Outside, this thing was probably sitting, waiting. Its claw fingers on the door handle, its face, looking at the ground. I closed my eyes to think, and I almost fainted. I opened my eyes immediately. I saw its face. When I closed my eyes, I saw its face. I had to get out. I began throwing things at the window. Sean has a heavy lamp in his room. I tried that first. It cracked slightly. It was thick glass. The screeching started again, this time on the door. At the same time, the door began bulging, as if this thing was going to push it right off its hinges into the room. I couldn't be here for that. I began throwing large books, his mini safe, and other small items about the room. It was a futile effort, as nothing was working. I looked at the laptop. It was the only way, my last chance, my saving grace. I picked it up as the door fell in. I didn't look back. The screeching was in the room now, only feet away from me. I threw the laptop at the window and it went straight through. I leapt after it, and as I did so, I felt it touch my leg. As I went through the window, the glass cut deep into my leg, and I fell a small distance onto the wonderful grass. It was now littered with small pieces of glass that I began to crawl through, creating small cuts all up my arms and on my hands. I kept crawling and didn't look back until I was at the ditch. I was bleeding out. I felt weak, and I had lost all energy. Just what the thing had wanted. I looked back at the window, and there it was, looking straight at me. This time with a full glaring smile, and its lifeless eyes directed straight at me. My vision blurred and my body went numb. I passed out. I awoke screaming in the ditch in the morning. The first thing I did was check my leg. I had no pain, and there was no tear in my jeans. I rolled them up, and sure enough, not cut. My arms were clean too. No blood or glass anywhere. I looked up at the window and dreaded what I would see, but it was clear. Not broken, but not new. Just the way it was before, as if nothing had happened. I noticed Garrett's car in the driveway and rushed inside. Garrett was sitting on the couch playing games. Garrett! I was practically screeching at him. Whoa, man, chill. What's up? That thing, the thing you guys saw, it was after me too. You didn't warn me. Why? Dude, what? What thing? That week I was planning the game night. Sean's blog said you guys got trapped in here, right? To be honest, I don't remember much of last week. Too much drinking or something, I guess? I think that may be your problem here. You hit up the club last night? No! I was right here. I swear I was right here. I talked to Sean and got a similar story. His laptop was just fine, and we couldn't find any blogs from that week. The only thing that remains unchanged is the scratches in the walls. My roommates claim they were always there. But I remember, I didn't forget like they did. I know what really happened, and I need to get out of here. We've never met before, so this may seem a bit odd, but I feel this is necessary. My name's Jay for starters. I work the checkout line at the grocery store up on 67th Street. You know the one with the parking lot that's way too big for the store itself? Yeah, that one. I'm 24, fairly tall, and have a rather scraggly appearance. You probably wouldn't recognize me if I came up to talk to you. I don't have a very memorable face. I don't really know why I'm telling you all this, to be honest. But this isn't the point of me writing you. I was working late at night yesterday. It was a very average day for the most part. Nothing too exciting happened, but you'd be surprised how interesting this job can get at times. I'd been reading some book the guy that had worked that counter the shift before me had left. It was some really crappy murder mystery chock full of cliches. Incredibly boring if you ask me. But it's something to do, I guess. When you showed up, though, my whole night changed. I don't know exactly what it was about you that caught my attention at first, but as soon as I saw you, I got this odd feeling. A weird mix between excitement and terror, that's the best way I can describe it at least. I saw you walk into my line and I quickly composed myself. I'd been slouching down in my chair for a while since I rarely ever get anyone in my line. It was only when you got closer that I realized what about you had caught my attention. You were absolutely beautiful. You walked up and said, "Hey," and handed me your cart. I could tell by the way you were talking and the way you looked that you were very sleep-deprived, though this wasn't surprising considering how late it was. After a second or two of awkward silence, I realized that you'd greeted me. I suddenly forced out a hi in response. I cursed myself out mentally for that one. I sat there for a second, trying to focus. "What's your name?" I said. It's only later I realize how odd this must have seemed. What kind of a grocery bag guy asks what someone's name is? I'm glad I did, though. I remember you said you were named Abigail, but that you go by Abby for short. Abby, it seemed to fit so perfectly. The name seemed to roll off my tongue as I said it back to myself silently. It was like sweet honey, it just felt good as I said it. You seemed to be perplexed when I looked back at you, and I wondered if I'd done something to upset you. "Shouldn't you be packing those?" you said, and pointed to your groceries. Suddenly shocked and embarrassed, I looked up and apologized, then clumsily started shoving groceries into bags as fast as I could. I couldn't believe myself. How stupid could I be? But when I looked up, I realized you were laughing. "You're kinda cute," you said. I tried to play it off cool, but I was obviously thrilled. A girl like this thought I was cute. "You are too," I said, as I hastily packed the rest of the groceries. As you walked out, you turned around as you reached the door and said, "Have a good night." I'm guessing I look pretty stupid writing all this down. You probably still remember it. I mean, it did just happen yesterday. But I went home ecstatic that night, and with all the confidence in the world. I feel like it's almost unreal writing it back here. Anyways, I wanted to write you this letter, Abby, to tell you that I love you. I don't know what it was I felt that night. It was some weird mix-up of emotions. But all I know was that even in that small little transaction we had, I felt as if there was something between us. Please, write me back soon. Sincerely, J. Dear Abby. It's been a week since I sent my last letter and I still haven't gotten a response, but that doesn't matter. How have you been? My life's been just as normal as usual. Get up, go to work, go to bed. I live in a really shitty apartment, but I guess that's what you get when you work as a grocery bagger. I've thought about you a lot lately, and I sometimes wonder if you still remember me. I saw you again today at work. This time it was at a more reasonable hour, thankfully. I didn't want to bother you to see if you'd approach me on your own. You came to my line again, which made me absolutely thrilled. This time I was less nervous. I was going to act normal no matter what you did or said. I wasn't going to let a girl like you slip through my fingers. As you walked up, you muttered something that was too quiet for me to make out, and waited at the end of the counter for me to finish packing your groceries. This obviously wasn't what I had expected, but it wasn't all too bad. You didn't seem to feel anything at all, actually. I was expecting you to either come up and talk to me or avoid me like the plague, but instead you just walked on through as if I was another stranger. This makes me wonder if you got my last letter. You should check your mailbox more often. There was one moment where I felt something, though. I looked over briefly to see what you were doing, and at the same time you seemed to look up at me to see how far along I was. Right then, our eyes locked. Only for a second or two, but in those 2 seconds I saw so much more in you than I had seen last time. I felt as if I had known you for years, like I knew all your intricate feelings and emotions. Did you feel anything like that with me? Shortly after I'd finished packing your bags, you paid and walked out. Obviously, this was a pretty normal process for me, considering I do it about 50 times every day. But I had been determined since the night I wrote you that letter that the next time I saw you, I was going to get more out of it. I kind of screwed that one up. I wasn't satisfied with it. I had to have more. There's a little room in the very back left corner of the grocery store designated for staff. In there, though, I knew they kept all the security footage from the day. All staff are informed of this and the security cameras' locations when they're hired. Luckily for me, there's one positioned right next to my counter. I waited until the store closed up and everybody left, and then I went in. After flipping through a few of the TV screens, I found the one that was connected to the camera by my counter. I rewinded it until about when I remember you coming in. After a few minutes of scanning, I'd found it. There you were. I paused on the best still shot I could find. I knew the camera wouldn't do you justice, but it was the best I could have for now. Having a longer look at you, I realized how truly perfect you were. Every feature of your body, your hair, your face, your legs, your chest was just perfection. I rewinded the tape to when you'd first came up to my line a few times. I couldn't help myself. My eyes were glued to the screen. After a few minutes of consideration, I popped out the tape and shoved it in my pocket, and then drove home. I knew I wasn't allowed to. I could very well be fired for taking such actions. But I couldn't help myself. I had to have you with me at all times, even if it means me losing my job. Abby, I love you. I love everything about you. I think about you constantly now. Do you feel the same way about me, Abby? I just want us to be together. Forever. Right back soon. Yours truly, Jay. Dear Abby, it's been 3 days and I still haven't gotten a reply. Why don't you want to talk to me? I'm still unsure if you got my last 2 letters. Please tell me if you have. So I got fired from my job. They found the missing tape. I got a call from the store owner, my boss, at 6 a.m. on Monday, and was told to come in immediately. They were having a mandatory all-staff meeting. When I got there, all of the staff was gathered around a small table with the owner at the head of it. Once everyone had arrived, he told us that apparently there had been a minor robbery yesterday. They'd had about $200 worth of stuff taken from them, and the one tape that would have shown who was the culprit was the one I had taken. Just my luck. He told us that no one was going to leave the room until someone confessed. After a few minutes, I finally gave in. I told him everything, about how I felt as if me and you had had some kind of connection. After explaining the whole story, the entire room was staring wide-eyed at me. After I finished, I sat there in silence for several seconds. Suddenly, the store owner broke the tension. "Jay, you're fired. Get out of here now and don't come back," he said. I did as I was told and got out of there as fast as I could. That stupid prick, he's always treated me like shit. He's been on my case since the day I got the job. I swear he's just been waiting for me to do one little thing that could justify firing me. And the one time I slip up, he finds out. Why didn't he understand, though? Doesn't he get that you and I are meant for each other? Any rational man would have understood. Anyone put in my situation would have done that, right? I've been searching you up a lot lately. With no job, I have all the time in the world to spend learning about you. Do you know how much you can find out about someone with just a first name and a town of residence? I found out your last name's Merritt. What a beautiful name, Abby Merritt. I can't help but say it aloud whenever I think about you. I also found out you're 24 and you only live a mile away from me. I drove down to your apartment complex today. It looks very nice. Much nicer than where I live. I asked to see you multiple times, but I was told that you weren't there every time. I felt more and more discouraged every time, but I was determined to see you again. After a few hours of asking, I decided to stay back in the parking lot for a while, waiting for you to come back. And after many hours of waiting, you did. It was late at night, around 10, I believe. I saw you pull up in your car and get out. I felt a sudden rush of warmth at seeing your face again. I know I have the security camera tape to look at, but it doesn't compare to seeing you in real life. I made sure to record it for later when I was at home, this time with a much higher quality camera. I wanted to capture as much detail as possible. I didn't know the next time I would see you, and the security tape wasn't enough for me anymore. I asked the woman at the front desk multiple times what your room number was, but she refused to tell me. She thought I was some sort of creep. See, Abby, these people don't understand us. They don't understand what we feel for each other. I ended up waiting in the parking lot a little while longer until someone came out. After talking to him for a bit, he told me what your apartment number was. He didn't want to talk at first, but I made him. You'd be surprised what you can make people tell you when you're holding a knife to their chest. Don't worry, I didn't hurt him too bad, but we can't have someone interfering with us. Don't you agree, Abby? I'm sick of all these people trying to keep us apart. I ended up watching you from the parking lot for a while. Once I found out your room number and how the rooms in this complex were organized, it wasn't hard to locate it. You should be more careful about shutting your blinds. You know, I was easily able to watch you from the parking lot. I can't get you out of my head anymore. Ever. All I do is watch that video I took of you over and over. Abby, I want to be with you forever. I want to wake up in the morning to see you next to me in bed. I cannot wait until the next time I see you again. Love, Jay. Dear Abby, I have some really exciting news, Abby. I'm moving in with you. Aren't you excited? We can spend hours and hours and hours together. It'll be just perfect. Let me explain. My job paid just enough so I could make rent and pay for food every week. Because of this, I had little to no money in savings. Nowhere near enough to last a very long time. When you take that money flow away, it doesn't take very much time until you have nothing left. I was able to get by for a few days, but just today I got evicted. This could actually be better. Then I had originally thought, I wouldn't be surprised if that guy that gave me your room number has been able to contact the police by now. This way they won't be able to find me, and we get to spend all the time in the world together. It's perfect, isn't it? I made sure to bring all my tapes and photos I've taken with me, though, and my cameras, of course. You should really tell whoever's managing your apartment complex to get better staff. I was able to get by security easily. I went up to your room and knocked on the door, but I got no answer, so I decided to get in by other means. After scanning the footage I took from last night over a few times, I noticed that you have a ventilation shaft in the corner of your room. Not surprising considering how hot it can get in the summer here. I figured there had to be some kind of maintenance hatch that I could get in through. After a few minutes of looking around, I found a door at the end of your hall that seemed to be some kind of staff room, and luckily there was a way into the vents there. I crawled through them until I got to your room. It was very cramped and hard to move around in, but I managed. When I got there, though, I felt a rush of success. I figured since the lights were out and I couldn't see you that you weren't home. But I'm patient. I scanned every part of your room, trying to memorize all the intricate details. Your scent overwhelmed me as I sat there. I had caught it briefly during the 2 times I saw you at the store, but never this strong. It was mesmerizing. I couldn't quite place my finger on it, but it reminded me of something. It was almost like peaches. I sat there hunched over for a few hours. though I've taught myself to be extremely patient. I can sit completely motionless for hours at a time, not moving a muscle. No one was going to notice me. Then, you finally got home. I felt a wide smile form on my face the second I heard the door open. There you were, my love. Of course you took no notice to my presence. The light in your room seemed to be angled perfectly, so you couldn't see anything in the vent after the first few inches. I tried to contain my excitement, but I started breathing very heavily. I tried to cover it up as best I could, but it was hard. You suddenly looked right at the vent. I went completely silent. After a few seconds, though, you seemed to lose interest. This made me smile. This was the perfect spot. I could tell I had startled you, though. All throughout the night you were turning over in your sleep to look at the vent. People seem to have a sense for when they're being watched. It can send them into complete panic. Don't try to fake it, Abby. I can tell when someone's awake. When someone's truly scared, sleep becomes impossible. Why are you so scared anyways? It's just me. Why would I scare you? You do love me, right? You know I love you. I'm looking forward to spending every day with you now, Abby. Write back if you can. Love, Jay. Dear Abby, I saw you wake up this morning. I didn't sleep a wink last night. You were too enthralling. I spent the whole night watching you. I couldn't help it. Any time I tried to look away, my eyes seemed to be drawn back a few seconds later. You look even more amazing when you're sleeping, you know. You'd be surprised how much you can learn about a person's personality by watching them sleep. I was tempted to get out of the vent to get a better view of you multiple times in the night, but I resisted the urge. I couldn't have you figuring out I'm here. Not yet, at least. You seemed to spend a lot of time in your bathroom in the morning. I assumed you were taking a shower or putting on makeup. Why would you do that, Abby? Anything you could do to change the way you naturally look would only cover up your true beauty. Why would you want to do that? Don't you want the whole world to see what I see in you? You left shortly after to work, or at least that's what I assumed. After careful consideration, I decided to leave the vent. I slid my hand through one of the slits and felt around for one of the bolts. The surface of the vent was very smooth, which made them very easy to find. I grabbed onto one and twisted as hard as I could, and finally was able to pop it off. I did this with all the other bolts and finally removed the grating. The first thing I did was go over to the bathroom. I quickly disposed of everything I could find that you could use to mask your face. That stuff disgusts me. This way everyone will get to see you how you truly are. I also found something else in there, your hairbrush. I grabbed it and brought it close up to my face to examine it. It was a dull blue, with a very thick rounded handle. But that wasn't what interested me. The hairs. That's what made me so interested. I took a good few minutes to pull every one of them I could see out and line them up on your counter. I counted them. I'd gotten 59. This pleased me greatly. I quickly scooped them up and put them in my pocket. I spent the rest of the day going through your stuff to learn more about you, your interests and such. I take it you're a big movie fan, Abby. I found your collection in the back of your closet. I have to say it was quite impressive. I found something else in there that made me mad. A picture of you with another man. It disgusted me just looking at him, holding you like he owned you. I'm the only one that can have you, Abby. No one else. At about 8:30, I considered starting to get back into the vent, since that's usually about when you get back from work. Then I had another idea. I looked at your bed. The blankets hung low enough to the floor that you couldn't see underneath the bed unless they were lifted up. I first screwed the vent grating back on, and slowly slid under with a smile on my face, and waited for you to get home. When you finally came in, you looked completely pale, and I noticed someone else came in behind you. They were talking to you about hearing noises coming from your room throughout the day. I mentally yelled at myself. I would need to be more careful from now on. Going under the bed had been a good idea, though, since obviously your first thought was to check the vent. You thanked the person, and they left. Finally, you and I were alone. I sat there in silence until you went to bed. It seemed to be an eternity before you did. I wanted to get a closer look at you tonight, and this was my chance. You got in bed and turned off the lights. I was cautious, though. I waited for hours to make sure you were asleep, and when I was sure you were, I slowly slid out from under the bed. And I saw you there. You looked absolutely stunning. Every curve of your body was perfect. Every little detail was beautiful. I was in awe just looking at you. I reached out my hand and I started to stroke your face. It was soft, like silk. I felt myself starting to get hard. Your beauty was overwhelming. I slowly reached down and started to pleasure myself. I tried to control myself out of worry of waking you up, but I couldn't help it. I felt pure ecstasy. Everything about you was perfect. Suddenly you seemed to turn and started to wake up. Horrified, I quickly slid back under the bed, trying to be as quiet as possible. A few seconds I saw you get out of bed and look around. I could sense your fear even without looking at you. You should feel calm with me around you, Abby. I'll protect you, Abby. No one will ever touch you but me. I'd kill someone for you, Abby. I made sure to pay attention today. You didn't bring in my letter from yesterday or any mail at all. You must just not check your mailbox. I'm going to change that, though. I'm going to leave this one on your desk tomorrow. Oh, I forgot to mention. I'm making something special for you. Check in your closet after you read this. Yours forever, Dear Abby. I spent more time today working on the surprise while you were at work. You're really gonna love it, Abby. I've put a lot of work into it, you know. I spent a few hours today putting the finishing touches on it, and I think it's finally ready for you to see. You got home at about 8:30 again, and saw the letter laying on your desk almost immediately. I started to smile as I saw you open it, waiting to see your reaction. It was really quite interesting watching your face. I could see all your different emotions and thoughts. You seemed to be confused at first, then shocked, then horrified. You started to shake violently, and I saw that you were starting to cry. Do you not like me, Abby? Why were you crying? Don't you love me? Don't you love me, Abby? I'm exhausted from today's work, and as much as I love you, I need sleep, Abby. Have a good night. I love you. Love, Jay. Dear Abby, do you see what you've done, Abby? Do you see what you've done? I woke up at 8 a.m. to see you frantically packing your bags. I was confused at first, but then I understood. You were leaving me. You don't love me. You don't love me. How could you do this to me, Abby? You were the only thing I wanted in life. I had nothing else to live for. But when I first met you, I saw a shimmer of hope. I thought that I'd finally have reason to wake up in the morning and go on with my shitty life. And you went and threw that away. How could you do this to me, Abby? A few seconds after you left your room, I got out of my hiding spot and followed behind you. I saw you throw your bags in the back and then get in your car and start it. I wasn't going to let you get away, though. Abby, I would never let that happen. I ran as fast as I could to your car and smashed out the window and dragged you out. Did you really think you could get away from me, Abby? I had to hit you over the head to knock you out. You were making too much noise. Someone else, someone that doesn't understand, could have seen and ruined everything. Well, I had a plan for if you reacted like this. I drove out to the storage unit at the edge of town. I'd reserved a slot the day I decided to move in with you. I drove up and unlocked it. I grabbed you and carried you inside it with me. It had only been a few minutes, so you were still unconscious. I made sure to check through your pockets to make sure you didn't have your phone with you. I set you down at the very back of the small room. Then I got in and lowered the door. I called the owner of the storage unit and told him that I had visited my lot the other day and forgotten to lock it, and asked him if he would mind locking it for me. Of course, he said yes, and I hung up. I then threw the phone on the ground and stomped on it to make sure that it'd never work again. Shortly later, I heard the owner come up and lock the door. About an hour later, I saw you start to get up. I first heard a very faint grunt, Then I saw your legs start to move. Shortly after you were fully awake. When you saw my face, you started to scream, which then subsided to a whine, and then to a whimper. That's when you saw it, the one other thing in the room. My knife. It was obvious why it was there, and after a second or two of realization you jumped and grabbed it. I looked you dead in the eyes and said, "Abby, I love you." And then I felt the searing pain of the knife being driven into my side. I felt it being pulled out and jabbed back in with great force. I could feel it go in each time, like a fire burning a hole through my chest. I fell to the floor, laughing while coughing up blood. I saw you back away, trembling, and sit back down in the corner. And now, as I sit here in a puddle of my own blood writing this, I wonder how you'll go out. Will you use the knife to take your own life? Or will you let starvation take you? Either way, we'll be together in death, Abby. Together from the day I saw you till the day we both died. Just as I wanted it. And as you sit there crying, I can tell you've come to this realization. Abby, this is all I ever wanted, and for that, I have to say thank you. Love, Jay.